In many cases, when people try to scale an idea, and when I say scale, what I mean is it worked in the petri dish. Can I raise that up to multiple cities or multiple countries or multiple markets, what have you? In many cases, the idea never had voltage. And what I mean by that is the data were simply lying. They were telling you there's an idea here, or there's a policy here that works, but it was simply a lie. And when you try to scale something that's a lie and there's no voltage, you're not going to have voltage at scale. You know, Nancy Reagan had really a goal to lower the drug use amongst high schoolers. So she decided that her topic in the mid-'80s was going to be a social inoculation program called DARE. And DARE is interesting because it's an informational program that tries to get teens not to use drugs. So she sent out operatives all over the country to go to high schools. I was a high schooler in the mid-'80s, and a person came into our high school and said, here's why you shouldn't use drugs, and gave us the whole spiel about why drugs are bad for our brains, for our bodies, etc. I can still remember looking at my teacher and saying, look, I don't use drugs, but I have a lot of friends who do, and there's no way that this is going to work. No way. Teacher looked at me and said, well, John, you might be right, but they say they have data. And in fact, they did have data. They had really good data from one study in Honolulu, Hawaii. It was with 1,777 kids. And I've scoured that experiment. It worked. It looked good. But it was simply a false positive. It was simply telling a lie that Nancy Reagan and the whole United States bought into. And we spent tens, hundreds of millions of dollars on a program that never worked. So when we went back and tested it, it didn't work. It was a false positive. So false positives, that's a very innocuous way, or let's say the data line that was just bad luck. Now, there are other false positives where people are just making up data. And I talk about that in the first chapter with Elizabeth Holmes in Theranos, where it was simply a fabrication of an idea that never had voltage. So sometimes it can be a little bit nefarious, like in Elizabeth Holmes, or I talk about other academics who have made up data as well. That's a bad false positive. The other times could just be bad luck. And that was a Nancy Reagan case. So you have ideas throughout the book. Every chapter has a different vital sign and a different set of ideas. Now, about both ideas that made it and ideas that didn't make it. And there are signatures of both of these types of ideas that if early on we figure out, does our idea have these signatures, then we have a lot better shot to change the world at scale.